Imagine being trapped in the vast vacuum of space with a deadly chemical leaking from your ship, threatening to shut down life support and poison the crew. No backup, no escape, just a ticking clock and your courage. This isn't the plot of a Hollywood movie, it's a real-life space emergency. This was the most dangerous mission in International Space Station history. The International Space Station, a marvel of human engineering and international cooperation, has hosted astronauts for over 2 decades. From groundbreaking science to global partnerships, the ISS represents the best of humanity. But space is not a friendly place. Every minute aboard the station comes with extreme risk: radiation, collisions, equipment failures, and the unforgiving vacuum outside. And in 2013, one of these threats turned into a full-blown emergency. During Expedition 35, transitioning to Expedition 36, a sudden ammonia leak forced the crew into an urgent and extremely dangerous mission that would test their training, their courage, and their will to survive. The discovery of the leak. When astronauts were aboard the International Space Station, ISS, on May 9, 2013, they observed something peculiar. Little white flakes floating past the windows. Upon initial inspection, it appeared to be either ice particles or trash from space. However, it was almost immediately apparent that the source of the leak was ammonia gas coming from the station's external cooling system. This new information was alarming. Through the process of transmitting heat from the station's internal systems to the radiators located outside, ammonia plays a crucial role in maintaining the station's temperature. The presence of a leak meant that vital systems, such as those responsible for life support, power generation, and communication, may potentially overheat. To add insult to injury, ammonia is extremely poisonous. There is a risk of death from exposure, and if it were to make its way inside the cabin, it would put the entire crew in danger. Why ammonia is essential and dangerous? The External Active Thermal Control System, EATCS, of the International Space Station, ISS, relies heavily on ammonia. In order to remove heat from the station's internal systems, liquid ammonia is pumped through pumps and radiators and circulated throughout the station. Due to the absence of it, the temperature on board would rapidly increase, which would lead to the system's overheating and possibly failing. However, despite the fact that it is essential, ammonia is also lethal. The chemical is corrosive and has the potential to inflict significant harm to the respiratory system. It is possible for a significant leak to either poison the atmosphere inside or freeze the systems outside. The stakes could not have been elevated any further. Acting quickly was necessary for the crew. Emergency protocols triggered. A rapid assessment of the situation was carried out by NASA engineers and mission control. It was concluded that the Pump and Flow Control Subassembly, PFCS, was the most likely source. This conclusion was reached on the basis of the location of the leak, which was precisely the P6 Truss portion of the station. There was not enough time for the team to engage in lengthy simulations or planning. A spacewalk, also known as an Emergency Extravehicular Activity, EVA, was planned to take place in fewer than 48 hours. When it comes to space operations, that is almost unheard of. Due to the intricacy of the task, the amount of training required, and the possible risks involved, the preparation for a spacewalk typically takes many weeks or even months. The turnaround time for this spacewalk would be among the quickest in the complete history of NASA. The astronauts who took the risk astronauts. Tom Marshburn and Chris Cassidy were selected for the high-risk EVA. Both were highly experienced. Marshburn was a flight surgeon with extensive mission experience, and Cassidy was a former Navy SEAL turned astronaut. If anyone could handle a mission of this magnitude, it was them. Still, they had limited time to rehearse and review procedures. Every tool had to be accounted for. Every motion had to be precise. One mistake could lead to fatal consequences. Despite the immense pressure, the astronauts maintained their composure, prepared their suits, and got ready to venture out into the most dangerous environment imaginable. The EVA, 230 miles above Earth on May 11, 2013. Marshburn and Cassidy made their first steps outside of the International Space Station, barely 2 days after the breach was found. They found their way to the leak site on the P6 Truss while their bodies were suspended in the nothingness of space. There they labored for more than 5.5 hours to remove the pump that was thought to be malfunctioning and replace it with a new unit. It was a very dangerous mission to undertake. It is possible that their suits would have been polluted if ammonia had been sprayed during the removal process. Ammonia has the potential to contaminate the air if it were to infiltrate the station during the re-entry process. Therefore, in order to prevent this from happening, the astronauts baked their suits in the sunshine for more than half an hour. This allowed any ammonia particles to evaporate before they went back inside. Challenges during the spacewalk. This EVA was not only dangerous, but also technically complex. Working in zero gravity is like performing surgery while floating in water. Every movement requires careful coordination. The astronauts had to handle heavy equipment while keeping themselves tethered, maintain communication with mission control, and follow exact procedures to avoid damaging any systems. At one point, bolts on the faulty unit were frozen, requiring significant effort and risking tool breakage. Temperatures in space can shift from plus 250 degrees Fahrenheit in sunlight to minus 250 degrees Fahrenheit in shadow. All of this had to be managed while floating 230 miles above Earth, with no margin for error. Mission success, but continued caution. Marshburn and Cassidy were able to properly install the new pump after putting in a number of hours of labor that was both accurate and physically taxing. A stop was made to the ammonia leak. However, despite the fact that the mission was successful, they were still in danger. A number of ammonia cleaning procedures were carried out on the astronauts before they were allowed to return to the space station. They examined and rechecked their tools and clothing to ensure that they were not contaminated. They were only permitted to return to the International Space Station if they had successfully completed all of the safety procedures. The crew was able to prevent what could have been a catastrophic breakdown of the space station by virtue of their training, dedication, and ability to make cool decisions under pressure. Psychological strain on the crew. As a consequence of the mission, each and every individual who was on board experienced a significant psychological toll upon themselves. In spite of the fact that astronauts are trained to deal with emergencies, the stress that they experience when confronted with a poisonous leak, limited supplies, and a high probability of system failure is quite different. After some time had passed, Commander Chris Hadfield, who was present at the station at the time, observed that the tension was unlike anything he had ever experienced before. The days that followed the EVA were emotionally draining because of the continual fear of recontamination, the uncertainty of whether the leak would repeat, and the responsibility of monitoring life support systems. All of these factors contributed to the emotional drain that was experienced. In spite of the fact that it is wonderfully breathtaking, the expanse of space is also terrible. Lessons learned in future protocols. When it comes to how NASA handles emergencies on board the International Space Station, the ammonia leak mission in 2013 proved a turning point. Changes were made to the training, mission planning, and equipment arrangement as a result of the successful emergency evacuation of the area. To improve real-time monitoring of cooling systems and to establish more rapid response protocols for spacewalks, NASA adopted increased protocols. Additionally, the mission emphasized how important it is to have spare parts readily available on board throughout the operation. A backup unit for the PFCS replacement unit had been kept in storage for a number of years before this. If it hadn't been accessible, the result of the incident could have been substantially different from what it was. It became a textbook illustration of how preparedness, other close calls in ISS history. Despite the fact that the ammonia leak that occurred in 2013 is still the most dangerous repair mission in the history of the International Space Station, it is not the only close call. When Russian computers failed in 2007, they came dangerously close to rendering the station's navigation and orientation inoperable. The launch of a Soyuz rocket in 2018 was unsuccessful, which resulted in the astronauts having to abandon the mission and perform an emergency landing. The Russian Nauka module, which had just docked with the International Space Station in 2021, abruptly fired its thrusters, which caused the ISS to spin out of alignment by more than 500 degrees. The precarious nature of life in orbit is brought into sharp relief by these episodes. However, in contrast to the other leaks, the one that occurred in 2013 required astronauts to put on their suits, travel into space, and attempt to remedy the issue on their own. This made it the riskiest mission that has ever been performed on the International Space Station. The story of the 2013 ammonia leak repair mission is a testament to human resilience, intelligence, and teamwork. While the vastness of space is filled with danger, it is also a place where our greatest strengths are revealed. Thanks to the quick thinking and courage of astronauts Tom Marshburn, Chris Cassidy, and the entire crew, a potential catastrophe was avoided, and the ISS continued its mission of discovery and cooperation. If you found this story fascinating, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more incredible true stories from space. Let us know in the comments, what do you think is the next big challenge humanity will face in space? Thanks for watching, and keep reaching for the stars.